You're not writing about the now, are you, at the moment? But this is a response to what's going on in the world.
That's a good question. What I'm doing with the new record is definitely a response to how I feel about what's going on in the world. But paradoxically, I've escaped. I just got fed up of it, and the timing was such that I was about to make a record, and stuff that's been going on over the last 18 months, which concerns us all and which you can't escape, it feels like you can't escape. I used being a musician and the record just to escape from. And
what are those reasons? Because I mean, people play music themselves, however badly it might be, just to, to think about the world, to be introspective for a moment, to get things out. Is that what you mean when you said you had to write it? I mean, did you have something to process, or?
There's a very sort of it's an interesting question, particularly when you've been doing it as for your career for so long. But from being a little kid, I'm a very sociable person, and I like people. But there's a thing about going away and playing the guitar and creating music, as separate from the words, perhaps, which is very meditative, I think, and. In my case, I set myself, I'm expressing my feelings, which are sometimes very introspective and complicated sometimes, so I'll play, and that is getting some feelings out, and it's just a private thing, or I'll have a riff and then craft comes into it, and it's like, in a way, the equivalent of someone even going into the potting shed, or even someone writing poetry, or sometimes doing a Rubik's Cube, if people remember what those are. It's like a puzzle that needs sorting out. So with playing the guitar, sometimes I wake up really early in the morning and it'll be the first thing I do, as almost like meditative thing.
How political is your music? I mean, it's not on the face of it political, is it? But
no.
The fact that you're in a band at all, or a musician at all, is sort of a political act, isn't it, in terms of expressing yourself?
No, I think that's right. I think if you're like me, if you're known anyway and connected with or known for having a certain viewpoint, or it's not really much of a stretch for people to know or guess what I think about things that are going on in society. Partly because of the generation I came out of, as in, the bands, when I started out with the Smiths, the bands like, you did on, say, New Order, The Cure, Billy Bragg particularly, more explicitly, all the bands that came out of the music, that were in the music press that came out of that time, and the culture were almost by definition had a certain kind of standpoint. Us and the music press were literally on the same page. The very fact of being in a band, it was a given that you had a certain kind of view and a position. And back then, if you played the Glastonbury Festival, that was a political act. And that, even without intellectualising it, that position, or that mentality, I think, and sensibility has really never left me. I don't think that sort of stayed with me. So people who have followed me, and I think are of the same kind of mindset, and you're just that kind of person. A lot of those bands, or a lot of musicians from the early 80s, have seemed to have fallen by the wayside somewhat. When I first came out making solo records, officially solo records in 2012, I think, a lot of the questions I was asked were about how things have changed and how people like me are almost, you're still the last bastion of political comment, which I wasn't really expecting, but I understand, and it goes back to what I've just said. It goes back to what you're first known for, I think. The times were very polarising when Margaret Thatcher was in power, and the country was changing rapidly, and
Did you feel that rage? I mean, did you feel that you were a reaction
to
growing up in Thatcher's Britain?
Oh, I absolutely felt, I really felt that I was very typical, and I felt very affected by growing up in Margaret Thatcher's Britain. The timing was such, I left school in 1980, and the couple of years leading up to that, when the employment figures were starting to go like this, and the privatisation and so on was very shocking. My generation became very aware very quickly that what our older brothers and sisters were doing, like getting apprenticeships, and our mothers and fathers, the opportunities they had were just taken away, really, and weren't really an option. I think just things like learning a craft and apprenticeships, and the way the country's economy was changing and industry was changing, and you were being, my generation was being very much. We were getting this message that you're the 1 million unemployed generation, you're the 2 million unemployed generation, and it was quite alarming. And plus, to be honest, Margaret Thatcher was a very as a figure, was a very, she was hard to ignore, a very imposing, forceful, I almost want to say sinister kind of presence. She wasn't difficult to lampoon, Margaret Thatcher, much like the recent political figures, because they're so full on, and I've got no subtlety or softness in any way. So, it was this very, very strong, forceful, as I say, forceful kind of presence looming in your future and in your present. So yeah, that's the way I remember being a young man, and so inevitably, when I formed the group, it was almost impossible to. You couldn't really be someone who didn't have a position, I think, even if it wasn't overt.
I mean, it wasn't overt, though, was it? Because you weren't singing overtly political songs. There was lots of politics in there, and there were issues in there. But you weren't going out there to try and. No, you weren't doing what Billy Bragg was doing or other people were doing at that time.
Well, I personally played on some Billy Bragg records, so I was very proud to align myself with Billy. I guess it's. What the Smiths was doing wasn't particularly overt, but we didn't really need to be, because there was no questioning which side we were on and what our affiliations were. Plus, we did a big GLC concert in support of Ken Livingstone here, which was at that time the biggest of our own concerts. I mean, it seemed to be all our own fans at the GLC, and that was a big noise. And the fact that we played Glastonbury, because back then Glastonbury was, most people won't know this or won't remember, but it was just 3 very, very uninviting fields. There was the big muddy field, and there was the really big muddy field, and then there was the shit field that no one ever wanted to go in, and that's what Glastonbury was. It was there was nothing like a cash point on in Glastonbury, and it wasn't like. It was nothing like what it was now. But the point is, going there playing there was a political act.
Creatively, I mean, does it feel at all similar now? As the political backdrop, it's again a very divided Britain that we're in.
Yeah, I'm asked quite a lot about what in the United States too, whether it feels similar to Thatcherism and Reaganomics, and it does, because it feels forceful and it's in your face and it's so polarising, I think. So for those reasons it does, because it feels like you have to, you can't really live your life without escaping, either without escaping, trying to escape, you can't really live your life without having a position or being at the effect of it. It feels very, like, there's no way out of it.
But the people who are angry are very different, aren't they, between then and now, I suppose. In that now, you've got a lot of people who are angry with politics in the world who you probably don't want to appeal to.
Well, fortunately, what it is now, one of the problems with with everybody having a voice now, is that a lot of very, very negative, very scary people have a platform now, whereas they were hiding under rocks before, and it was because it was more difficult 30 years ago for reactionary views. They had to be very, very ballsy to go out on television or go out onto the streets, because they had to front up what they're saying. Now it's a lot easier for people with dodgy views and hateful views to express those views, because they can hide behind anonymity. But also there's so easy now to be unaccountable for anything, really.
Just talked about playing a gig in support of Ken Livingstone when you were in the Smiths with Morrissey, and right now we see Ken Livingstone leaving the Labour Party over anti-Semitism allegations, Morrissey in trouble over all the stuff that he's been saying about politics. I mean, things have changed a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, things have changed. But 30 years is a long time, you know. I was 24, just about 24, I think, when I left the Smiths, and I've done a lot since then. My life's been pretty busy, pretty full, and as anyone can imagine, if they think about it, 30 years is a long time, and a lot can happen in 30 years. Someone said to me a while back now that your personality is something that you can change throughout your life, but character doesn't. And I wondered about that, and so even though, you know, life's changed for me in 30 years, I think my character, just speaking personally, hasn't really changed that much. So in some ways, my values are, I think, still the same as they always were, probably.
Your values, your values are the ones that haven't changed.
My own values haven't really changed very much, but you know, but at the same time, I like to think that as a person, I've changed a lot. I'm someone who likes the idea of changing as a person next year. I don't really want to be the same person as I am now in 5 years. I think it's one of the great things about life, that you can change. So I can only speak about myself. My values are the same, but as a person, I'm a different person than I was when I was 24, I hope.
I mean, when you were in the Smiths, though, I mean, Morrissey would say controversial things. You would completely stick by him. You were loyal, and you were mates, weren't you?
Yeah.
You don't feel any need to stick by him now, presumably, do you? I mean, because
I don't feel any need to stick by anyone unless I agree with what they're saying.
Do you disagree with what he said?
Of course, I disagree with what he's saying, because I don't think that's really a surprise that I would disagree with what Morrissey's saying. I think everyone would expect that I disagree. Of course I disagree.
How do you feel about Ken Livingstone now?
I didn't like Ken Livingstone when I met him, and that's what I talked about in the book. Yeah, I've met a few politicians over the years, and not many, but a few, and I've always been really completely struck by the enormity of the ego in the room as soon as I'm with them. You know, they're incredible. You know, I'm sure there's a few that I'd really like to meet.
Not David Cameron.
Barack Obama is someone I'd really quite like to have met, but no, certainly not David Cameron. I mean, my experience of as I say, of politicians is just that they suck up every single bit of attention and energy and oxygen in any room that they're in, and that was quite insightful for me, regardless of the political persuasion. They're very, very into notoriety and fame, and in a way that the most famous musicians that I've been around just would never even be able to compete with.
Did you feel Cameron was saying he liked the Smiths partly because it would make him look good?
Yeah, I thought David Cameron was completely trying to try to appropriate, cool by association. He's trying to appropriate some sort of favour and credibility, and by saying he liked the Smiths, and he completely picked on the wrong person. I was offended by it, and I always thought that people couldn't see through that. was, I thought, again, you know, the ego of it and the arrogance of it was quite astounding, really. But I don't think he quite expected that someone was going to take him up on it. But I actually did it to be humorous. I'm glad.
Some of us found it funny.
Yeah. Some people, and the fact that some people didn't see the humour in it was, again, you know, sort of a lot of people are like that now, aren't they? Humorless, but I thought it was funny. But also, as it snowballed, that whole thing between me and David Cameron, I was glad I did it. You know, I was glad he got pulled up about it. Someone should have pulled him up. He's got a lot to be pulled up about, that guy.
You talked about what we've been going through over the last year and a half, and one of the biggest things that has happened in the last year and a half was the attack in Manchester.
Yeah.
At the arena. What was your response to that?
Well, man, I heard about that because I have these peculiar sleeping patterns, partly because I travel so much, so I wake up at times in the morning, and I got a text at about 4:30, and I was aware that my phone was glowing, and I couldn't really make sense of what was being said. It was from a friend of mine in Chicago, and they were expressing this, you know, their dismay and horror and everything. And it was a real jolt in more ways than one, you know, sort of in the middle of the night. And then I sort of went through this really numbing, strange days as you know the events unfolded. I was working in the studio during that period, and I'd been recording this song called "A Different Gun," which is the last song on the record, and it's just uncanny, really, because "A Different Gun" was a song that was. I decided I was going to try and complete. And it was inspired by the Bastille Day attack in Nice with the lorry. I was struck by this really odd contrast between the warm breeze blowing palm trees in the wind in Nice and the horror of bodies along that clean, posh tarmac, and families and children running around. So difficult to process. And that kind of contrast between the sultry warm night and the fear of, collective fear of people running around the streets, that I don't know, I was able to relate to it, and it just stuck with me. So I wondered about whether I could sort of turn that, or whether I could express that in music, you know. Almost really as a tribute to humanity in a way. It sounds very highfalutin, but when you're a songwriter and when I'm working on a record, I become completely consumed by it. It takes over my entire life, and everyone around me knows that. So I had this piece of music that was inspired by that, and I was working on it when the Manchester attack happened. And my friends are in this band, Broken Social Scene, from Canada, and they're really close friends of mine, and they'd come in to play in Manchester, and they arrived hours after it had happened. So they still wanted to play the concert, and they wanted me to get up and play with them, and I didn't think I was able to do it. Now, Kevin Drew from Broken Social Scene was walking around Manchester, sending and filming these little clips of my people from my town crying and laying flowers and coming together and singing in the streets, and he was just sending me these little clips, and I was so proud and, you know, in shock. So that's the way that day went for me. So I didn't want to play with him, but at the last minute I went down to the concert, and we opened with this song, Anthems for a 17-Year-Old Girl, and it was a moment I'll never forget, you know. So I just wanted to pay tribute, and I guess the other thing about that day was I remembered that just after 9/11 in New York, I went to spend some time in New York, and it was interesting for me because I noticed quite quickly that New Yorkers' own identity started to shift somewhat in a very interesting way, because particularly that city had become a city where the New Yorkers' self-identity was one of dog eat dog. We are known for barging past each other, and we're a no-nonsense kind of organisation. You know, when you're on the streets in New York, we tell it how it is, and we're very almost, it's like a terse kind of society. But when 9/11 happened, it's an amazing side of humanity that that something that you love comes under threat and attack. Amidst all of this fear and conversation about are New Yorkers going to leave, very quickly becomes this sense of protection, physical protection. We're going to protect the place, but also we're going to protect our legacy. We're going to protect our character. We're going to protect what we are. We're going to protect our reputations. We're going to protect each other. That's what happened in Manchester. I saw it in 9/11. I remembered it, and I was doing a couple of interviews and I was asked about it. And I knew that was what was going to happen, because I know what Mancunians are like. They're not that dissimilar to New Yorkers. And amidst the shock, I knew that, and the devastation, I knew that I was going to be swept on a wave of pride, really, coming from that city. And that's what happened.
And A Different Gun was changed as a result?
I finished the song and there was a few lines that went in there. I wasn't really sure whether I was going to put that song on the record, because a little bit of me was wondering whether, you know, it was appropriate, or whether I had the skill to represent something so serious, and whether I had the right to do it as well, you know, just as a rock guitar player, singer, you know, whether that was right for me to do it. But I decided that, so I finished the song, and there's a line in it. The main line is "Stay and come out tonight," and that comes from my friend Kevin Drew from Broken Social Scene, who was nudging me to come out tonight and play. You know, stay with us, come out as an act of defiance and tribute, and that really helped me out. And I managed to put that in the song. And then another line, as all the news was unfolding, I was really struck by this story of a homeless guy who went to the rescue of a young girl, and he was talking very matter-of-factly and very, very modestly about how he had this young girl in his lap, and he was looking into her eyes, and that line, there was something in her eyes, went into the song as well. So all of that was so heavy, I wondered whether I had the right to put it out. I thought, well, it doesn't have to go on the record, finish it. And when the record was finished, I decided that if I didn't put it out, I would have just bottled it, really, and been a bit of a chicken, and I would have regretted it. So I'm glad it's on the record now, because it isn't about horror, it isn't about anger. It's about being hung in the air with shock, really. And that was my sort of challenge, really, and that was the sort of task I set myself. So it's got quite a lot going on in that song.
It's interesting that you described yourself as a rock guitarist and singer.
Yeah.
Because those are sort of two things that for years I probably wouldn't have described you as.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that your identity now, do you think? Because you are your own act with your own band behind you?
Yeah, well, I've always, without flinching, called myself a pop guitar player, a pop musician. That's because I grew up as a little kid in an age when pop music, these things are always very subjective, but pop music was amazing. I'm sure that lots of young kids think today's pop music was amazing, but it was built on guitar. I think today, pop musician, right now, I'm always looking for a great pop tune, but right now, pop music, which is by definition, when it's great, about affirmation and life affirming and making you feel good, and it's got hooks all the time, spread all the way through it. Even if it's doing that, which I'm not really sure it is doing that, it has rock music for me right now, and I've made a rock record, a modern rock record, pop music can't really do what rock music does for me right now. My new record, because it's darker, it does pop. What pop can't do for me now is it's not very dramatic. I think the times are a bit more dramatic, and I want more music that's slightly more dramatic. I want to play music that's more dramatic. And pop isn't particularly sexy. It's become so sanitized and so bottom line, and that it's not sexy at the moment. It could be again, and it has been in the past. To answer your question, I'm happy at the moment. I realised I was making a rock record halfway through it, and rock in a way that, you know, there's been plenty of times in my life when I've sort of tried to shake off, particularly when I was young, shake off what rock was, you know, because it was in the late 70s, early 80s, it'd become really quite old-fashioned and synonymous with certainly a sort of outdated version of masculinity that my generation we just couldn't relate to, you know, so macho. But my new record, definitely has more drama in it, and is slightly darker, and it's a place, I think some tracks are a place where I want to hang some decent imagery and some good riffs and a bit of escapism, you know. And pop music is so compressed now, like almost everything in pop culture. There's no room to hang around, there's no room for drama, there's no room for imagery, there's no room for reflection, there's no room for sex in pop music. It's just so compressed, full of, you know, attention deficit disorder. It's you know, ADD for the ears. As I remember, musicians, it was important for musicians, and I think it still should be important for musicians of whatever instrument, to be concerned with having your own original voice. I remember trying to play these things that I would hear from records, glam rock records, Motley Hoople, David Bowie, whoever, all kinds of stuff, and then later on Motown records and disco records, just whatever grabbed my ear. So you're trying to play that, and so you're influenced by it, and you want to be this person, you want to be that. But I do remember that I wanted to have my own thing. That was very important, and the environment that I grew up in, there was a lot of guitar players around. I grew up on this council estate in South Manchester, and there was guitar players and bass players and drummers everywhere. It was strange, really, unusual. And it was almost like a race to be able to play Rebel Rebel or Smoke on the Water or whatever it was, you know, Bebop Deluxe for a big band. And then when New Wave happened, it was like a race to play Tom Verlaine and Television Licks and whatever. But everyone had to have their own thing.
So you were deliberately looking for that, because in retrospect, when you listen back to those early Smiths records, you can see those influences of disco and you know, all sorts of types of music that, you know, you weren't looking for at the time.
By the time I came to form the Smiths, I'd a year and a bit, 18 months of very deliberately woodshedding in my bedroom at my parents' house, and then in this little attic that I was lodging in, of making tapes, almost like a laboratory. And I'd really decided that I was going to try and discard a load of what was what guitar playing had become, and I definitely was on a mission to try and create a certain kind of thing, and I knew what it was.
So when was that? How old were you?
17.
What was the moment you thought, yeah, I've got it now?
So it's that was when I was about 17, just when I was looking to put the Smiths together, and I was making all these tapes in this attic, layering guitars on top of each other, and but trying to really, I was trying to make a new kind of rock band, or a rock band, modern rock band, right, that my mates would like, that was inspired by the girl groups, because I got into the Shangri-Las and the Ronettes and the Crystals, and I liked the song structures, and I knew that, so rather than blues rock or punk or whatever, I like that kind of music anyway. It sounded weird to me, and I liked the chord changes, and I thought, if I can put, now it's called post-punk, but back then it was just new, new kind of guitar playing on top of girl groups records and find a singer to do it and have my own Mancunian Rolling Stones, then I'm really onto something.
I mean, we call the podcast Ways to Change the World because we often talk to people who actively want to change the world.
Yeah.
I mean, is that part of what you're doing? I mean, or is it more about your own expression? I mean, do you want to change the way people feel? Because obviously music touches people. Yeah, I think it's fair to say you have changed the world because you've touched people with your music.
Right.
You know, for decades. Is it something you actively want to do in terms of what you're saying with your music?
As a person, I sort of go along with that notion that if you do want to change the world, the best way and probably the only real way you can do it, I mean, maybe it's different if you've got, like, you know, if you're a huge political figure or something like that, but the best way of doing it is to actively try and change your little corner of the world day by day with your interaction with people as you go through the day. And that's actually that gives you plenty to think about, you know what I mean? That, and then there's, you know, we played on there was another song that we did a few years back that says, if you can't change the world, change yourself. And then I think in turn that changes the world. So just that, you know, might sound a little cheesy, but you know, if you go through the day trying to change your little, the maybe 20 feet around you as you interact with the person you're buying the train ticket from, or the person you're buying your sandwich from, or the person you're sitting next to at work or sitting next to on the train, I think that's plenty to be going along with, and not as easy as it sounds. So as a human being, I think that gives me plenty to think about. As someone in public and as a working musician, I think I just want to give people a good listen and if it's put on me to be a sort of entertaining, slightly flash, slightly larger than life guitar player who uses that in the service of making modern pop records, then that's enough for me to be getting along with, I think, and I think that's my job. Yeah.
Johnny Marr, thank you very much.
Thank you.